She cleaned houses for 20 years hidden from her millionaire husband. When he discovered the reason, his world fell apart. The morning sky over Seattle was a moody gray, heavy with the promise of rain. Clara stood in the small kitchen of her suburban home, the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. She glanced at the clock, noting the time slipping away. Nathan would be leaving for his important business meeting soon, and she needed to be ready. With a practiced efficiency, she pulled out her well-worn cleaning supplies from a cupboard, her heart racing with the weight of the secret she carried. "Clara, are you almost ready?" Nathan's voice echoed from the living room, laced with the urgency of a man who thrived on punctuality. "Just a moment, Nathan," she called back, forcing a smile as she carefully placed a bottle of all-purpose cleaner into her bag. She felt the familiar pang of guilt twist in her stomach. Every day began with this internal battle, the delicate balance between the life she led and the life she hid. As she zipped her bag, she replayed the morning's routine in her head, each moment a reminder of the life she crafted so meticulously. Today was just another day of scrubbing floors and dusting shelves, but it was a day filled with purpose. Each dollar earned was a step closer to securing her daughter Sophie's future, a goal that had become Clara's lifeline. "Clara, you know I can't be late today." Nathan's voice cut through her thoughts again, this time tinged with impatience. "I know, I'm coming," she replied, her heart racing. She took a deep breath, smoothing down her simple blouse and checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at her was a blend of determination and fear, a facade she had perfected over the years. As she stepped into the living room, Clara found Nathan adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. He was tall and handsome, his dark hair neatly combed back, the epitome of success. She admired him for a fleeting moment, a pang of love mixed with the fear of the truth looming over her. "Ready?" he asked, his eyes catching hers. "You look great." "Thanks," she said, her voice a bit shaky. "You too, I hope your meeting goes well." He turned to her, a quizzical look crossing his face. "You're sure you'll be okay? I don't like leaving you alone for so long." "I'll be fine, really," Clara reassured him, forcing a smile. Inside, however, she was a whirlwind of emotions. The thought of Nathan discovering her secret life was a constant shadow, creeping closer with each passing day. "All right then," Nathan replied, still looking slightly unconvinced. "I'll be home late. Just don't work too hard, okay? You deserve a break." "Of course," she nodded, her heart aching at the thought of disappointing him. As he leaned in to kiss her goodbye, she felt a rush of warmth, but it was quickly replaced by the heavy burden of deception. After he left, Clara stood by the door for a moment, listening to the sound of his car pulling away. The house fell silent, and the reality of her situation hit her like a tidal wave. This was her life, a life of secrets, of scrubbing away the past, all for the future of the one person who mattered most to her, Sophie. With a deep breath, Clara grabbed her bag and headed out into the drizzle. The fresh, cool air hit her face, invigorating yet laced with apprehension. She walked down the tree-lined street, each step a reminder of the duality of her existence. As she turned the corner, the neighborhood transformed. The houses became larger, more opulent, and Clara's heart raced with the thrill of her secret mission. Today, she would clean the home of one of Seattle's elite, a sprawling estate that glittered like a jewel amidst the drizzle. Clara arrived at the property, her heart pounding. She adjusted her bag, taking a moment to gather herself before knocking on the grand door. As it swung open, revealing a young woman in designer clothing, Clara's nerves tightened. "Ah, you must be Clara. Come in," the woman said with a bright smile, oblivious to the storm of emotions brewing within Clara. "Thank you," Clara replied, stepping inside the luxurious foyer, a world away from her own modest home. As she began to work, scrubbing and cleaning, the weight of her secret pressed down harder than ever, reminding her with every sweep of the cloth that this life she led was not just about cleaning houses, it was about building dreams for her daughter, no matter the cost. Clara stood in front of the mirror, her heart racing as she adjusted her hair. The morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting a soft glow on her face. She glanced at the clock, mentally calculating how much time she had before Nathan would leave for his important business meeting. Today felt different. She could sense the tension in the air, as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting for a revelation. As Nathan entered the kitchen, dressed in his tailored suit, Clara forced a smile, trying to mask the turmoil brewing inside her. "Good morning, love," she said, her voice steady but laced with an undertone of anxiety. "Morning, Clara," he replied, grabbing a cup of coffee. His eyes lingered on her for a moment, searching for something. "You look nice today." "Thanks, just trying to look presentable," she replied, avoiding his gaze as she busily wiped down the counter. The smell of fresh coffee filled the room, but it did little to calm her nerves. Nathan took a sip, his brow furrowing slightly. "You've been working a lot of late hours recently. Are you sure everything is all right?" Clara's heart skipped a beat. She felt the familiar pang of guilt wash over her. "Oh, you know how it is. Just trying to keep everything in order," she said, forcing a light laugh. "You know how demanding the clients can be." He nodded, but Clara noticed a flicker of doubt in his eyes. She felt the weight of her secret pressing down on her, and for a moment she considered confessing everything. But the fear of shattering the life they had built together held her back. Instead, she changed the subject. "How's the project with the new investors going?" "It's going well. I just need to finalize a few details today," he said, his tone brightening. "After this meeting, I might have some good news for us." Clara smiled, but the thought of her secret gnawed at her insides like a relentless tide. She busied herself with preparing breakfast, her mind racing with worry. After a few moments of silence, Nathan broke it again. "Are you sure you're okay? You seem distant." "I'm fine, really," she insisted, her voice slightly more high-pitched than intended. "Just a lot on my mind, I guess." "Clara," Nathan said gently, placing the coffee mug down on the table and stepping closer. "You can talk to me about anything. You know that, right?" With her heart pounding, she forced herself to meet his gaze. "I know, Nathan. I promise it's nothing to worry about." He studied her for a moment before nodding, though the concern in his eyes remained. "All right, just take care of yourself, okay?" As he finished his breakfast and prepared to leave, Clara felt a rush of panic. What if he found out? The thought of Nathan discovering her secret life sent shivers down her spine. She wanted nothing more than to protect him from the truth. But at what cost? "Have a good day at work," she said, trying to sound cheerful as she walked him to the door. "Thanks, Clara. I'll see you later," he said, leaning down to give her a quick kiss. The warmth of his lips lingered on hers, but it felt heavy with unspoken words and hidden truths. Once Nathan left, Clara let out a shaky breath. She stood in the empty hallway, feeling the silence echo around her. The weight of her secret was suffocating, and the fear of being discovered loomed over her like a dark cloud. Later that day, as she prepared to leave for her next job, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a message from one of her clients, requesting her to come earlier than planned. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she read it. She could feel the familiar pull toward her double life, the thrill of escaping her reality, but the guilt gnawed at her relentlessly. She glanced at a framed photo of Nathan and Sophie on the wall, their smiles bright and carefree. "They don't deserve this," she whispered to herself, a tear escaping down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily, gathering her cleaning supplies. There was no time for doubt. She had a job to do. As she drove through the rain-soaked streets of Seattle, memories of her past flooded her mind. The struggles of her childhood, the sacrifices of her mother, and the dreams she had for Sophie. Each house she cleaned was a step closer to providing her daughter with the life she had never had, but at what cost? Clara's heart ached as she parked in front of the grand home of her next client, the weight of her choices pressing heavily on her soul. As rain poured down in relentless sheets outside, the rhythmic drumming on the roof echoed the tumultuous storm brewing within Clara's heart. She wiped the last remnants of dust from the elegant living room of a wealthy client, the opulence surrounding her feeling like a stark contrast to her own life. The plush sofas, the glimmering chandeliers, these were the dreams she had long abandoned, and yet they served as a beacon of hope for her daughter, Sophie. As she folded her cleaning supplies into her bag, her thoughts drifted to Nathan, who was oblivious to the sacrifices she made for their family. Clara remembered the moment she decided to start cleaning houses. The memory flooded back, vivid, and emotional. It was a chilly evening when she sat on the living room floor, bills scattered around her, all reminders of the struggles her family faced. "I won't let Sophie grow up like I did," she had sworn to herself, determination igniting a fire within her. She will have a better life. The front door creaked open and Clara's heart raced. She quickly organized her things, knowing she had to leave before Nathan returned. But fate had other plans. Just as she estaba prestes to slip out, she heard his voice calling her name. "Clara? Are you home?" Nathan's tone was light, but she could sense an undercurrent of curiosity. "Just a second," she shouted, her heart pounding. She needed to think fast. As she stepped into the hallway, Clara was met with Nathan's warm smile, but it faltered as he took note of her cleaning gear. "You're back early," he remarked, raising an eyebrow. "I thought you had a few more clients today." "Ah, you know how it is," Clara replied, forcing a smile. "Some days are slower than others." She could feel the tension tightening in her chest, knowing that her carefully constructed facade was beginning to crack. "Right," Nathan said slowly, his gaze piercing through her. "Well, I was hoping we could have dinner together. I have some news." Clara's stomach churned. She could hear the clock ticking, each second a reminder of her secret. "That sounds great, but Clara," Nathan interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "What's going on? You've been acting strange lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I'm just busy, Nathan. You know how it is." "No, I don't know how it is," he insisted, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You've been coming home late more often. I've seen the cleaning supplies. Are you working at a hotel or something?" Clara's heart raced, and she could see the suspicion in his eyes intensifying. "It's nothing, really, just a few extra hours to help out." "Help out?" Nathan's voice was incredulous. "Help out with what? We have everything we need. Why do you feel the need to hide this from me?" "Because it's not what you think," she snapped, the weight of her secret pressing down on her. "I do it for Sophie. I'm saving money for her education. She wants to be a doctor, Nathan. I can't let her dreams slip away just because we're comfortable now." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan's expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to something softer, more contemplative. "You've been cleaning houses for 2 decades, for her?" "I didn't want you to worry," she said, tears pooling in her eyes. "I thought I could manage it on my own. I wanted to protect you both from the stress of it all." Nathan took a step back, his mind racing as he processed her words. "So all this time, you've been lying to me?" "It wasn't a lie, Nathan. I just didn't want to burden you. I thought you would understand if you knew the truth." "Understand?" He echoed incredulously, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've been cleaning other people's houses, while I've been out making deals, thinking everything was fine. Clara, how could you hide this from me?" "I did it because I love you and Sophie," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting you both." Nathan's expression softened, and he ran a hand through his hair, frustration giving way to sorrow. "I just don't know what to think. You've sacrificed so much, and I didn't even notice." Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her secret lift slightly as she spoke from her heart. "I thought you would be proud of me. I wanted to show Sophie that hard work can lead to a better life. I wanted to be a role model for her, not just a wealthy wife." "I'm proud of you, Clara," Nathan admitted, his voice low and sincere. "But the fact that you felt you had to do this alone, it breaks my heart." As the storm raged outside, they stood in the hall, two souls intertwined, but momentarily lost in their own turmoil. Clara reached for Nathan, her hand trembling as it brushed against his. "I'm so sorry for keeping this from you. I just wanted to do what was best for our family." Nathan's eyes softened, and in that moment, the love they shared began to break through the cracks that had formed between them. "Let's figure this out together," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "No more secrets. We're a team, and I want to support you in this. We will make sure Sophie has everything she needs." With that, Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a reminder that even through the darkest storms, love could light the way forward. Clara stood in the dim light of the kitchen, her heart racing as she wiped her hands on a dish towel. The rain tapped insistently against the window, matching the tumult of thoughts in her mind. Today was the day Nathan would return home early from his business meeting, and she could feel the weight of her deception pressing down on her. The house was quiet, except for the rhythmic patter of raindrops, amplifying the tension in the air. As she finished washing the last dish, the sound of the front door creaking open sent a shiver down her spine. Nathan stepped inside, shaking off his umbrella, droplets of water cascading down his tailored suit. He looked up, and their eyes met. For a moment, everything felt normal, but Clara could see the flicker of suspicion in his gaze. "Hey, love, you're home early," Clara said, forcing a smile as she tried to mask her anxiety. "Yeah, the meeting wrapped up sooner than expected," Nathan replied, his voice steady but his expression unreadable. "How was your day?" He hung his coat, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in the scene around him. "Just the usual, cleaning and organizing," she replied, her voice slightly trembling. "You know how it is." Nathan's brow furrowed. "Right, just the usual." He stepped closer, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Clara, I've been meaning to ask you about your long hours. It's not normal for someone who doesn't have a job." Clara's heart raced. "I told you, Nathan, I like to keep things tidy. It helps me clear my mind." "You didn't answer my question," he pressed, his voice rising slightly. "Where exactly do you go every day? What are you really doing when you're not at home?" The tension in the room thickened, and Clara's stomach twisted in knots. She had known this moment would come, but she had hoped to delay it, to find some way to explain without revealing the truth. I just help out some friends," she stammered, avoiding his gaze. "Friends?" Nathan echoed incredulously. "You expect me to believe that? I've seen the way you leave the house, Clara. You're dressed to impress, and it's not just for grocery shopping." He took a step back, running a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. Clara took a deep breath, her chest tightening. "Nathan, please, I can explain." "Then explain, because it feels like you're hiding something from me, and I deserve to know what it is." With a heavy heart, Clara turned away, staring out the window at the rain-soaked world beyond. "I didn't want you to worry. I didn't want to burden you." Her voice broke, and she felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "Burden me?" Nathan's voice softened, but the hurt was still palpable. "I thought we were in this together. Why would you hide something so important?" Clara finally turned to face him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Because I was afraid of what you would think of me. I didn't want you to see me as just someone who cleans houses." Nathan's expression shifted as the weight of her words settled over him. "Clara, you're not just a cleaner. You're my wife, my partner. I love you. Why wouldn't you trust me with this?" "I do trust you," she cried, her voice rising. "It's just, I've been saving money for Sophie. I wanted to pay for her college. I didn't want you to feel like you had to support us both." Nathan's eyes widened, realization dawning on him. "You've been cleaning houses for our daughter's future?" Clara nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "I grew up in poverty, Nathan. I watched my mother struggle, and I promised myself that my daughter would have opportunities I never had. I thought I could do this without burdening you, without making you feel ashamed of me." Nathan's heart raced as he absorbed her words. The anger he felt began to dissipate, replaced by a profound sense of admiration. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Clara, you're incredible. I can't believe you've been doing this all along, but you should have told me. We're a team." I know," she whispered, her voice filled with remorse. "I just didn't want to ruin what we have. I thought you'd see me differently." "Different? I see you as a woman of strength and courage," Nathan said earnestly, his thumb brushing away her tears. "I may have felt betrayed, but I understand now. We can face this together." As the rain continued to pour outside, Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe they could rebuild the trust that had been shaken. She took a deep breath, looking into Nathan's eyes, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself to believe that they could emerge from this stronger than before. The storm raged outside, the wind howling as Clara stood by the kitchen sink, her hands immersed in warm, soapy water. The rhythmic sound of raindrops against the window matched the turmoil brewing in her heart. She had just returned from a grueling day of cleaning another luxurious home, but the exhaustion didn't matter now. Nathan's expression earlier that evening had haunted her thoughts. He had been unusually quiet during dinner, his eyes clouded with suspicion. Clara glanced at the clock on the wall, its ticking growing louder in the silence. It was almost midnight, and she braced herself for what was coming. She heard the front door creak open, followed by the heavy footsteps of Nathan entering the house. She quickly dried her hands on a dish towel, taking a deep breath as he stepped into the kitchen. "Clara," Nathan began, his voice low and measured, "we need to talk." "Okay," Clara replied, trying to maintain her composure. She avoided his gaze, focusing instead on the bubbles forming in the sink. "What about?" He crossed his arms, leaning against the counter. "I saw you today, at that woman's house, the one on Maple Street." His voice trembled slightly, a mix of disbelief and hurt. "What were you doing there?" The air thickened with tension as Clara turned to face him, her heart racing. "Nathan, I can explain." "Explain? Explain what?" he interrupted, frustration lining his features. "You've been hiding this from me for years. Why, Clara? Why didn't you tell me?" Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she fought them back. "I didn't want you to worry. I thought I could manage it on my own." "Manage what? Cleaning houses? Is that what you've been doing instead of spending time with me? With Sophie?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small kitchen. "I thought we were a team." Clara swallowed hard, her chest tightening. "We are a team, Nathan. But you don't understand. I do this for Sophie. She wants to go to medical school, and we can't afford it. Not with the way things are." Nathan paused, his expression softening slightly. "You think I wouldn't have helped? That I wouldn't have supported your decision? I didn't want you to feel guilty," she confessed, her voice trembling. "You've worked so hard for everything we have. I didn't want to burden you with my past, with my fears." He stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto hers, searching for the truth. "Your past? Clara, it's part of who you are. I love you for that. But you have to be honest with me. We've built our life together on trust." Clara stepped closer, her heart aching. "I know, but I was afraid. Afraid of what you would think of me. Afraid that you would see me differently." Nathan ran a hand along his jaw, his expression torn between anger and understanding. "You think I would judge you for wanting to help our daughter? For wanting to give her a better life? Clara, that's the most noble thing anyone could do." "Then why does it feel like I've betrayed you?" she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't want to hide anything from you, but I thought I was protecting you. Protecting us." The storm outside intensified, thunder rumbling ominously as Nathan took a step towards her. "You didn't protect me. You shut me out. I can't help but feel like I don't know you anymore." Clara's heart sank at his words, and she took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I'm still the same person, Nathan. I'm still your wife, your partner. I thought I could handle it alone." He closed the distance between them, his voice softening. "You don't have to handle it alone, Clara. Not anymore. We can face this together." Clara looked up at him, hope flickering in her chest. "You mean that?" "Of course I do," he said, his voice steady. "We'll figure this out. Together." As the storm raged outside, Clara felt a sense of calm wash over her. For the first time in years, she believed that they could navigate this storm, hand in hand, united by a love that was stronger than any secret. She reached out, taking Nathan's hand in hers, their fingers intertwining as they faced the tempest together. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a restless spirit, as Nathan paced the living room, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and hurt. Clara stood by the kitchen counter, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped away the remnants of dinner. She could sense the tension in the air, thick and palpable, as Nathan's footsteps echoed against the hardwood floor. "Clara," Nathan finally broke the silence, his voice tight. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years?" Clara turned to face him, her heart heavy with the weight of her secrets. "I was trying to protect you, Nathan. I didn't want you to worry about me or about money. You have so much on your plate already." "Protect me?" he scoffed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "You've been cleaning houses for 2 decades, Clara. You could have told me. We could have faced this together." "I didn't want to burden you," she exclaimed, tears welling in her eyes. "You work so hard. I thought if I could just save a little, it would all be worth it when Sophie goes to college. I wanted her to have opportunities we never had." Nathan's expression softened slightly as he processed her words, but the hurt lingered. You think I wouldn't have supported that? You think I wouldn't have wanted to help you? Clara stepped closer, her voice breaking. It's not about the money, Nathan. It's about what I went through as a child. Watching my mother struggle to make ends meet, I promised myself I would do everything I could to give Sophie a better life. I didn't want to feel helpless again. But you've been living a lie, Nathan said, shaking his head in disbelief. For 20 years, you've hidden this from me. How can I trust you now? Trust is built on understanding, isn't it? Clara pleaded, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I never meant to deceive you. I just thought I was doing the right thing. Nathan took a deep breath, the storm outside echoing the turmoil inside him. Right or wrong, you made a choice to keep this from me. You made me feel like I didn't know you at all. Clara felt the sting of his words, each one cutting deeper than the last. But you do know me, Nathan. You know my heart. I love you and I love our daughter. That's why I did it. Love? Nathan's voice rose. Is that what you call this? Hiding your life from me? Hiding your struggles? Please, just listen, Clara implored, her voice trembling. I did it for Sophie. I wanted to ensure she had choices, a future. I thought if I could manage it on my own, I could protect you from my past. By living a double life? Nathan replied, incredulous. You made me feel like a fool. I trusted you. And I trusted that you would understand if you knew the truth. Clara shouted back, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to hurt you, Nathan. I thought I was being strong for us, for our family. The room fell silent, the only sound the relentless rain against the windows. Nathan's gaze softened as he looked at Clara, the weight of her pain starting to seep into his own heart. I don't know how to reconcile this, Clara. You've shattered my trust. I know, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. But please, let's try to understand each other. I'm still the same person you fell in love with. I thought I could be both a good wife and a good mother. Nathan's shoulders slumped as he stared at her, the anger slowly dissipating, replaced by a profound sadness. I want to believe that, Clara. But it's hard. It's so hard. Clara stepped forward, desperation in her eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I need you to know that everything I did was for our daughter, and I never wanted to keep secrets from you. He ran a hand down his face, the tension in his jaw easing as he struggled with his feelings. You don't need to do this alone, Clara. We can face it together, but you have to be honest with me. No more secrets. The sincerity in his voice began to chip away at the walls Clara had built around her heart. I promise, Nathan. No more secrets. I'll tell you everything from now on. As the storm raged outside, the couple stood at a crossroads, their hearts heavy but hopeful. They were both battered by the tempest of emotions, but knew that the only way forward was together. The rain fell relentlessly that night, drumming a steady rhythm against the window panes of Clara and Nathan's home. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with unresolved tension, the kind that hung like a storm cloud, ready to unleash its fury. Clara sat on the edge of their bed, her heart racing as she replayed the day's events in her mind. She knew that Nathan had discovered her secret, and now she could only wait for the confrontation that was sure to come. As the clock ticked ominously, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Nathan emerged, his face a mix of anger and confusion, his tailored suit slightly damp from the rain. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a fortress of emotions building around him. Clara, he began, his voice low but steady. We need to talk. She looked up, her heart sinking. I know, Nathan. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Nathan cut her off, stepping further into the room. You've been lying to me for years. You've spent 2 decades cleaning houses while I thought you were at home or running errands. Why didn't you tell me? Clara felt a lump rise in her throat, but fought to keep her composure. I did it for Sophie, she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. I wanted to give her everything I never had. I wanted to make sure she could go to college, that she could become a doctor. By cleaning toilets? Clara, you could have told me. You could have asked for my help. Nathan's voice rose, a mix of frustration and heartbreak. I would have done anything for you. You didn't have to do this alone. I thought I was protecting you both, Clara said, her voice trembling. I didn't want you to worry. I didn't want Sophie to feel ashamed of who we are. I just wanted to make sure she had a chance. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room as he processed the weight of her words. He could feel the betrayal gnawing at him, but beneath it lay a flicker of admiration for her strength and determination. You think this doesn't change everything? You've been living a double life, Clara. How can I trust you again? I didn't want a double life. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to feel like I was doing something meaningful. She pleaded, her voice rising with the desperation of a woman who felt cornered. You don't understand what it's like to grow up without anything. I promised myself I would never let that happen to our daughter. Nathan paused, his back to her, taking in the rain-soaked world outside. Memories of their life together flooded his mind. The laughter shared over dinner, the quiet moments spent on the couch, their dreams for the future. He turned slowly to face her, his expression softening just a fraction. But why couldn't you trust me enough to share that burden? I would have understood. Clara wiped her tears, feeling the weight of his words. I wanted to shield you from my past, Nathan. I didn't want my struggles to taint the life we built together. I thought I was being strong for us. Strength doesn't mean hiding everything, he said, his voice now a whisper, as if the very act of saying it could shatter the fragile atmosphere. It means being honest, even when it's hard. Clara's heart ached at the realization of how much her actions had hurt him. I was scared of being judged, of you thinking less of me. I thought if you knew, it would change how you see me. You're still the same woman I fell in love with, Nathan said, the tension in his voice gradually dissipating. But you have to let me in. We're a team, Clara. We can face anything together, but only if we're honest with each other. The storm outside began to ease, the rain lightening to a gentle patter. Clara took a deep breath, the weight of her secret beginning to lift. I don't want to hide anymore, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I want us to face this together. Nathan stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking. Then let's start fresh. No more secrets. We'll figure this out together. As they stood facing each other, the air between them crackled with a renewed understanding, the storm inside them beginning to calm. Clara nodded, tears still glistening in her eyes but now mixed with hope. Together, she echoed softly, a promise that they would navigate this tumultuous sea side by side. The storm raged outside as Nathan paced the living room, the sound of thunder booming like the turmoil in his heart. Clara stood by the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if trying to shield her heart from the weight of the moment. The rain lashed against the glass, mirroring the chaos of emotions swirling between them. Nathan, please, Clara began, her voice trembling. I never meant to hurt you. I did this for Sophie. He paused, his back to her. For Sophie? Is that really your excuse? You've been cleaning houses for 20 years behind my back, Clara. How could you think that was okay? His voice rose, a mixture of anger and disbelief. Clara turned to face him, the anguish etched on her features. I believed I could keep it a secret. I wanted to protect her future. I grew up poor, Nathan. I watched my mother struggle every day. I promised myself that I would do whatever it took to give Sophie a better life. Nathan's shoulders slumped as he took a deep breath, the anger slowly dissipating, replaced by a sense of betrayal that gnawed at him. You don't trust me enough to share this? We could have figured something out together. I didn't want you to see me differently, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want you to think less of me because I've spent my life scrubbing floors instead of living in the luxury you've provided. I thought I was doing the right thing. Doing the right thing? He shook his head, disbelief flooding his features. You've been living a lie, Clara. We built a life together. And now I find out you've been hiding this from me all along. How am I supposed to trust you again? Clara's heart sank. She stepped forward, desperation in her eyes. You have to understand. Every time I cleaned a house, I imagined Sophie in medical school. I pictured her in scrubs, helping people. It made the work worth it. I was sacrificing for her future, Nathan. It was never about the money for me. It was about her dreams. Nathan turned to face her, the storm outside raging in sync with the turmoil inside him. But you could have told me. I would have supported you. I was afraid, she admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was afraid you wouldn't understand. I was afraid you would think I was ashamed of you, of our life. I love you, Nathan. I didn't want you to see me as less than what I am." Silence enveloped the room, punctuated only by the sound of rain tapping against the window. Nathan's gaze softened as he studied her. He had always admired Clara's strength, her resilience, but now it felt like a double-edged sword. "I wish you had trusted me," he finally said, his voice low. "I wish you'd let me in." Clara stepped closer, her heart racing. "I was trying to protect you too. I didn't want to burden you with my past, the shame I carry. I thought if I could just save enough, everything would be okay. I thought I could keep our life intact while working for Sophie's future." Nathan closed his eyes, wrestling with the swell of emotions within him. "I can't help but feel betrayed, Clara. I can't just forget this." "I know," Clara responded, her voice breaking, "and I don't expect you to. I want you to understand why I did it." He opened his eyes and met her gaze. "I do understand that you were trying to do something noble, but it doesn't change the fact that you kept it from me. I need time to process this." The room fell silent again, the weight of their words hanging heavily between them. As the rain continued to pour, they stood there, each lost in their thoughts, the storm outside reflecting the tempest of emotions within. Deep down, Clara hoped that, despite the tumult, there was still a chance for them to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. But for now, all they could do was face the uncertainty together, waiting for the dawn to break through the darkness. The storm raged outside, the rain hammering against the windows of Clara and Nathan's upscale home in Seattle. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The air felt heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Clara stood in the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped down the countertop, the familiar motion grounding her amidst the turmoil swirling in her mind. She could hear the muffled sounds of the television in the living room where Nathan was sitting, his posture rigid. The flickering light from the screen cast shadows across his face, but Clara knew that his mind was elsewhere, consumed by the revelations of the day. The confrontations still echoed in her ears, the anger, the betrayal, the hurt that had flashed across his features when he had discovered her secret life. "Clara," Nathan called after a long silence, his voice low but firm. She paused, her heart racing. She didn't want to face him, not yet, but she knew she had to. Swallowing hard, she walked into the living room, where Nathan sat with his hands clasped tightly, his brow furrowed in thought. "Can we talk?" he asked, avoiding her gaze as he stared at the screen. "Yes," she said softly, taking a seat across from him. The distance between them felt like an ocean, vast and unbridgeable. He finally turned to look at her, his blue eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and hurt. "All these years, you've been lying to me, Clara. Why didn't you just tell me? I thought we shared everything." "I was trying to protect you," Clara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "And Sophie, you have to understand, I did it all for her. I wanted to give her the life I never had." Nathan's expression hardened. "But you didn't think I could handle it, that I would support you?" "I would have done anything for you, Clara." "I know," Clara said, tears welling in her eyes. "But it was my decision. I didn't want to burden you with my past, with my fears. I wanted to make sure Sophie had every opportunity to succeed, to live a better life than I did." He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "You think I wouldn't want to help you? That I wouldn't want to be a part of this?" Clara shook her head, her heart aching. "It's not that simple, Nathan. I thought if I could just save enough, if I could just keep this secret a little longer, then maybe it would all be worth it." "Worth what?" He snapped, his voice rising. "The lies, the deception. You've been cleaning houses while I've been out there, building a life for us, thinking we were in this together. You made me feel like a fool." "I never wanted to make you feel like a fool," Clara cried, her voice cracking. "I wanted to give you and Sophie everything. I thought if I could do this alone, it would be a gift, a sacrifice. I didn't want to take away your pride." Nathan's expression softened slightly, the anger giving way to a flicker of understanding. "Clara, I love you. I've always loved you. But love is about trust, too. You should have trusted me enough to share this with me. What if something had happened to you while you were out there working?" "I know," she said, her voice trembling. And I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I could manage it all without burdening you." Silence hung in the air, thick and uncomfortable. Nathan stared at her, his emotions swirling. Finally, he sighed deeply, running a hand over his face as if trying to wipe away the pain of betrayal. "So what now? What do we do from here, Clara?" "I don't know," she admitted, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I want to be honest with you. I want to fight for our family. Sophie deserves to know the truth, and so do you." Slowly, Nathan nodded, his expression shifting from anger to something more contemplative. "We need to figure this out together. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I want to try. For Sophie's sake and for us." Clara's heart raced at his words, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I promise I'll be open with you from now on. No more secrets." He reached across the space between them, taking her hand in his. "We'll get through this, but we need to communicate. I can't lose you, Clara. Not like this." "I won't let you," she vowed, squeezing his hand tightly. "We'll face this together." As the storm raged on outside, the couple sat in silence, but for the first time in hours, there was a sense of unity. The road ahead would be difficult, but they were willing to walk it together, hand in hand, ready to rebuild the foundation of trust that had been shaken but not broken. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a mournful spirit, but inside the house, the atmosphere was thick with silence. Clara sat at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly around a steaming mug of tea, the warmth barely reaching the chill in her heart. Nathan stood by the window, his back turned to her, staring out into the torrential downpour, lost in thought. The tension hung palpably in the air, like the oppressive weight of the storm itself. "Clara," Nathan finally spoke, his voice low and heavy. "You could have told me, all those years, and you kept it from me." He turned slowly, his face a mixture of hurt and confusion. "Do you know how it felt to find out like that? To think I didn't even know who my wife really was?" Clara's heart sank further. She had braced herself for this moment, yet nothing could prepare her for the pain of seeing the betrayal reflected in his eyes. "I was trying to protect you, Nathan." "What?" she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't want you to worry. I didn't want you to feel ashamed of me." "Ashamed?" Nathan scoffed, his brow furrowing in disbelief. "How could I ever feel ashamed of you? You're the most incredible person I know. But this secret, it's like a chasm between us." Clara took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts as the memories flooded her mind. "You don't understand how hard it was for me to grow up. My mother worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. I promised myself that I would never let Sophie feel that kind of struggle. I wanted to give her something more, something I never had." Nathan's face softened slightly, but the hurt was still there, etched into his features. "You think I wouldn't have supported you? That I wouldn't have understood? I would have done anything for you, for Sophie." "I know," Clara whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But I didn't want to burden you. You've worked so hard for everything we have. I didn't want you to see me as just the woman who cleans houses, even if it was for a good cause." Nathan stepped closer, his voice a whisper now, almost pleading. "Clara, you've always been more than that to me. I love you. I love your strength, your courage, but hiding this from me, it feels like you didn't trust me." "I do trust you," she exclaimed, desperation rising in her voice. "I was scared, Nathan, scared of what you would think, scared of how it would change everything between us." "Change?" Nathan shook his head, his expression softening as he reached for her hand. "Clara, we can't be a partnership if we're keeping secrets from each other. You're not just my wife, you're my equal, my teammate. We face everything together." His words struck a chord deep within her. Clara looked into Nathan's eyes, searching for the love that had always been there, despite the turmoil. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to protect our family. And I want to protect you," Nathan replied, his thumb brushing away the tears on her cheek. "But we can't do that if we're not honest with one another." The storm raged outside, but inside, the atmosphere began to shift. Clara could feel the weight of the moment lifting, replaced by something warmer, more hopeful. "What if we worked together?" she proposed tentatively, her heart racing. "What if I showed you everything I've done and we figured it out as a team? Nathan's eyes lit up with a spark of understanding. "You really want that?" he asked, his voice softening further. "Yes," Clara nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. "I want us to be united in this, to face it as a family. I want Sophie to have a future, and I want us to do it together." Nathan smiled, warmth spreading across his face. "Then let's do it. Let's show Sophie that love is built on trust, on sacrifice, and on honesty." Clara felt a rush of relief wash over her as Nathan enveloped her in a warm embrace. "I love you, Nathan," she whispered, burying her face in his shoulder. "And I love you," he replied, holding her tightly. "Let's face the storm together." As they stood there, the rain pounding against the windows, Clara realized that they had transformed a moment of crisis into a new beginning. The thunder crashed, but within their hearts, a new understanding began to blossom, illuminating the path ahead.